Good morning. Being intentional. It's a process. I'm working on it. Okay. So, conference starts tomorrow. Today is Friday, and conference starts tomorrow. And whose conference talk do you read when you want to get pumped up and jazzed for conference? That's right, Jeffrey. Our substitute father. Our father in proxy. So anyways, his talk is called A Perfect Brightness of Hope by Elder Jeffrey R. Holland. And honestly, when you want to get pumped up, you read his talk, So he begins by saying that last October, when President Nelson asked us all to prepare for the April conference and to think about the restoration, he and his wife, they imagined themselves back in 1820, and they imagined themselves to have the same religious upbringing as the people there. And then they thought and asked themselves, what's missing? What do we hope for in this time? What are we looking forward to? And he goes on for quite some time talking about what they would hope for. And this one part here is interesting. To borrow a phrase from William Ellery Channing, a prominent religious figure of the day, we would have looked for the parental character of God, which Channing considered the first great doctrine of Christianity. Such a doctrine would have recognized deity as a caring Father in heaven rather than a harsh judge dispensing stern justice, or as an absentee landlord who had once been engaged in earthly matters but was now preoccupied somewhere else in the universe. And I feel like some people still view God this way. Speaking of viewing God in a certain way, in that book I was telling you guys about yesterday at work, called The Doctrine and Covenants and the Future by Roy Doxley, he was talking about declining faith. Now, the book was published in 1957, and he's quoting a study from 1935, where it talks about this study done in Chicago, and it's a study done from ministers and students at colleges, and their view of the Bible, and it was like half of the ministers didn't even believe in the virgin birth. How can you be a minister and not believe in basic fundamental principles? Anyways, it was fascinating. So, Holland goes on and he talks about all these things that they would have hoped for. They would have hoped for basically everything that our church offers. And he says, our list of 1820 hopes could go on, but perhaps the most important message of the Restoration is that such hopes would not have been in vain. Beginning in the Sacred Grove and continuing to this day, these desires began to be clothed in reality and became, as the Apostle Paul and others taught, true anchors to the soul, sure and steadfast. What was once only hoped for has now become history. So, anyways. And then he says, but what about looking forward? What do we hope for going forward? And he says, he starts talking about COVID, because it was back in April. It was new. And he says, when we have conquered this, and we will, may we be equally committed to freeing the world from the virus of hunger, freeing neighborhoods and nations from the virus of poverty. May we hope for schools where students are taught, not terrified they will be shot, and for the gift of personal dignity for every child of God, unmarred by any form of racial, ethnic, or religious prejudice. Undergirding all of this is our relentless hope for greater devotion to the two greatest of all commandments, to love God by keeping his counsels and to love our neighbors by showing kindness and compassion, patience, and forgiveness. And I remember back in conference when he said these words, I was like, yeah, we're going above and beyond for this silly little virus that isn't even as bad as the common cold. I don't believe in COVID. Y'all know this. I'm like, yeah, why aren't we working as hard to end hunger? You know, these people who say that, what was it? Somebody said, if you're, how did it go? It said, if you are a conservative in your youth, you're heartless. But if you're a liberal in your adulthood, you're brainless. And so I think people view liberalism as being this kind-hearted, oh, everybody needs to have equal rights, which they do. But what are you doing about it? What are you truly doing about it? Burning down cities, does that help anybody? Let us be equally committed to freeing the world from hunger, freeing neighborhoods and nations from the virus of poverty. Do protests help that? Do creating independent nations such as Chaz help that? They say they want these certain things, but are they willing to work for them? Moving on, he says, undergirding all of this is our relentless hope for greater devotion to the two greatest of all commandments, to love God by keeping his counsels, and to love our neighbors by showing kindness, compassion, patience, and forgiveness. These two divine directives are still, and forever will be, the only real hope we have for giving our children a better world than the one they know now. And isn't it true? Isn't it true? If people knew God, understood his counsels, his commandments, if they understood his doctrine, if they actually read the Bible or the Book of Mormon or the Doctrine and Covenants and read what principles Jesus taught, and they wanted to live them, imagine what kind of world that would be, where everybody is kind, compassionate, patient, and forgiving, instead of selfish, morose. Anyways. And then he says that in addition to these global desires, us as individuals have certain desires that we're longing for, such as, he says, a marriage to improve, or just a marriage in general, for an addiction to be conquered, for a wayward child to come home, that sort of stuff. And he says, because the restoration affirmed the foundational truth that God does work in this world, we can hope, we should hope, even when facing the most insurmountable odds. That is what the scripture meant when Abraham was able to hope against hope. That is, he was able to believe in spite of every reason not to believe. That he and Sarah could conceive a child when that seemed utterly impossible. So I ask, if so many of our 1820 hopes could begin to be fulfilled with a flash of divine light to a mere boy kneeling in a patch of trees in upstate New York, why should we not hope that righteous desires and Christ-like yearnings can still be marvelously, miraculously answered by the God of all hope? We all need to believe that what we desire in righteousness can someday, some way, somehow, yet be ours. And I liked this bit because he's saying, if the hopes of people in 1820, or hopes of the world, people of the world, if those hopes were answered, and God does work in this world, that's one thing that I loved here. Reaffirm the foundational truth that God does work in this world. He's here. He's working. He's we got to do our best. He's already doing his best, but he's here. He knows what he's doing. You know, we always say, somebody said that the Lord was not surprised by COVID-19. He wasn't surprised by it because he knows. So he's still working here. And it says that we need to believe that our righteous desires will come true. That the things that we hope for in righteousness will someday, some way, somehow yet be ours. And that refers to the Lord's timing. So, he says, we know something of today's religious shortcomings that still leave the hunger and hope of some unfulfilled. We know a variety of those dissatisfactions are leading some away from traditional ecclesiastical institutions, looking answers in themselves instead of outwardly. We also know, as one frustrated writer wrote, that many religious leaders of the day seem clueless in addressing this kind of decline, offering a response. Excuse me. Offering in response a thin gruel of therapeutic deism, cheap symbolic activism, carefully couched heresy, or sometimes just uninspiring nonsense. And all at a time when the world needs so much more, when the rising generation deserves so much more, and when, in Jesus' day, he offered so much more. As disciples of Christ, we can, in our day, rise above those ancient Israelites who moaned, "Our bones are dried and our hope is lost." Indeed, if we finally lose hope, we lose our last sustaining possession. And this is a thought. Losing our hope, we lose our last sustaining possession. It's a thought that, you know, if you want to think about it in terms of torture, you know, they can take everything away from you. They can take your home, they can take your dignity, they can take your churches, your freedoms, but your hope and your faith is something that live within inside you, and they can't take it. It was over the very gate of hell that Dante wrote a warning to all those traveling through his Divina Commedia. "Abandon all hope," he said, "ye who enter here." Truly, when hope is gone, what we have left is the flame of the inferno raging on every side. So when our backs are to the wall, and as the hymn says, other helpers fail and comforts flee, among our most indispensable virtues will be this precious gift of hope, linked inextricably to our faith in God and our charity to others. In this bicentennial year, we look back to see all we have been given and rejoice in the realization of so many hopes fulfilled. I echo the sentiment of a beautiful young returned missionary who said to us in Johannesburg just a few months ago, "We did not come this far only to come this far." And that also is a thought. That is a thought-provoking thought. I'm sore from yesterday. We did not come this far only to come this far. And I think that resonates a little bit with me because of my intentional kick that I am on. Being intentional. I didn't come this far in life to just come this far in life and just kind of live out my days and you know, sit on the sidelines and just wait till I die. You know, I didn't come this far to come this far. I'm 34. I got some life left in me. Paraphrasing one of the most inspiring valedictories ever recorded in Scripture, I say with the prophet Nephi and that young sister, "My beloved brethren and sisters, After ye have received these first fruits of the restoration, I would ask if all is done. Behold, I say unto you, Nay. Ye must press forward with steadfastness in Christ, having a perfect brightness of hope, and a love of God and all men. If ye shall, saith the Father, ye shall have eternal life. And then, he's such a beautiful writer and a beautiful speaker. No wonder everybody loves him. He says, I give thanks, my brothers and sisters, for all we have been given in this last and greatest of all dispensations, the dispensation of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. The gifts and blessings that flow from the gospel mean everything to me. Everything. So in an effort to thank my Father in heaven for them, I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. May we press forward with love in our hearts, walking in the brightness of hope that lights the path of holy anticipation we have been on now for 200 years. I testify that the future is going to be as miracle-filled and bountifully blessed as the past has been. We have every reason to hope for blessings even greater than those we have already received, because this is the work of Almighty God. This is the church of continuing revelation. This is the gospel of Christ's unlimited grace and benevolence. If you are feeling hopeless, if you are feeling like, oh my goodness, what is happening out there? First of all, turn off the news. My life has been greatly enriched by not listening to the news. But secondly, read his talk. We have every reason to hope for blessings even greater than those we have already received, because this is the work of Almighty God. I am so happy I did this General Conference study before General Conference. I am so pumped and ready for General Conference now. I'm kind of weary about which talk I choose for tomorrow, because this one was magnificent. It was perfect. It was at the perfect time, perfect words. I love Jeffrey. I love Jeffrey. All right, that was A Perfect Brightness of Hope by Elder Jeffrey R. Holland. What a man. What an awesome apostle. Love him. Love you. And I will talk to you later.